So trying to make the whole process much more transparent and legible, I think, is a big thrust for us going forward. And I agree with you, Mike, that as crypto ascends into the global stage, we need to be held to a higher standard as an ecosystem. And I feel in a micro way that's also true for us at EigenLayer.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Namada, the shielded asset hub rewarding you to protect the multi-chain. So not only can you protect your own data across any asset and any chain, but you also get shielding rewards for strengthening data privacy protections for everyone. So you can check them out at namada.net and follow their mainnet launch. Stick around, you're going to be hearing all about them later in the program.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bell Curve. Before we jump in, quick disclaimer, the views expressed by my co-host today are their personal views and they do not represent the views of any organization with which the co-hosts are associated with. Nothing in the episode is construed or relied upon as financial, technical, tax, legal, or other advice. You know the deal. Now, let's jump into the episode.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bell Curve. This is a special episode. I've got my co-founder, Jason, joining me, and today we were talking to Sreeram.
Hey, Jason. Hi, Mike. Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we are excited to have you and excited to speak. So this is a big episode. Obviously, it's been an interesting last couple of weeks for EigenLayer, and we're going to be spending some time talking about the couple of CoinDesk articles that came out, and that's going to be sort of the first half of this, and just give you a chance to sort of respond publicly. So EigenLayer's already put out a blog post, which we'll link in the show notes, and we can feel free to go through and rehash. But just wanted to give you the opportunity to answer, just address publicly and answer some of the questions that Twitter and the ecosystem has. And then I actually want to spend, the last half of this episode talking about some of the cool stuff that EigenLayer has done recently, and then what's coming up on the roadmap. I don't want the last couple of weeks to distract too much from all the cool stuff that EigenLayer is doing, including the Rio acquisition. And actually, in the interest of conflict of interest, Jason and I were investors there, so now we're small Eigen bag holders ourselves. But you've got your token launch, you did the raise with A16Z, and there's a bunch of stuff coming up on the protocol side. So just want to finish the episode by talking about all the cool stuff that you guys have on the roadmap. So maybe just to set the scene here, and then I'll just turn it over to you, Sreeram. But there have been two articles that came out from CoinDesk over the last week or so. One in which they talked about a list of Eigen Labs employees that was getting passed around to solicit airdrops from potential partners in the ecosystem. And then there was an article about Eigen executives claiming airdrops that were barred for US residents. So, I just want to kind of turn it over to you and get what's your high level response to all of this?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the forum to talk about this. I think there are many false or erroneous implications people are drawing from these articles. For example, one thing seemed to be that people thinks, Eigen Labs or EigenLayer is coercing ecosystem projects into airdropping tokens to Eigen Labs or to other ecosystem partners. The other one is that people are thinking maybe some of the employees have done something wrong or gate kept the list or things like that. I think the truth is very different from what is painted by this article and all the other downstream things that people are thinking. I'll set the context of what and when this happened. So it's early this year. We had Celestia launch. We had a few other projects which had launched, just before that. And there was this airdrop meta, like, hey, you participate in one of these ecosystems, you're going to get an airdrop, all this kind of things going on in the ecosystem. And we got approached by first one, then two of our ecosystem partners who were actually doing their own, airdrop distribution to think about how should we do this airdrop that reaches the EigenLayer ecosystem, not Eigen Labs, but the EigenLayer ecosystem. And some of the other modular projects, for example, had chosen to choose GitHub, GitHubs of developers as the main vehicle to do these distributions. For example, Celestia did the thing where it's all modular, ecosystem repositories, including EigenLayer, was chosen to do the distribution. So some of our employees got the Celestia airdrop. We looked at this pattern, and this pattern actually creates more conflict because you don't know who the employees are in any of these ecosystem projects who received these airdrops. And the other one we were seeing with GitHub distributions is that when you distribute to GitHub, you are prone to sibling. You're prone to new bots coming up and then fixing typos so that you have n number of pull requests that can actually, you know, so that they can earn these airdrops. So we didn't think that as a recurring mechanism for an ecosystem, doing distributions via GitHub were actually appropriate. So we were thinking about what options exist, and one option was, hey, these teams exist, and we understand, we can actually have team sourced lists. So you go to Eigen Labs, you can give you the list, and there are 30 ecosystem projects which some of our team members went and collected lists separately from each of these 30 ecosystem projects. And the idea was, this is kind of like, hey, here is some information. If you were considering doing a distribution to this ecosystem, here's some information you can use. And this was specifically sourced on request for the first couple of these projects. And then some of our employees thought, okay, if this is happening, maybe there are other teams who are actually thinking of doing the same thing and would go the other way, which is do the GitHub or other distribution. Instead, if they were interested, we could send them this, and maybe they talk to a few other projects. And I think this is basically all that happened. Basically, there's a comprehensive list of these 30 plus projects that was shared, and which was specifically created on request. And each project, when could do what they wanted with this list: reject it, choose a subset, choose a superset, weigh different projects differently. We saw all kinds of these things happen, and as far as we know, there has been 3 projects which did the distribution, and Eigen Labs employees were included in one which did the distribution, and nobody claimed. So that's the facts of what the matter are. Every airdrop that included Eigen Labs included many other projects. As an example, AltLayer included a distribution to 39 projects, one of which was Eigen Labs, teams from 39 projects. So we've continued to work very closely with 100 plus partners, whether they use this method or some other method or didn't do an airdrop, whatever the consequences were. So that is the approach. The other one is inside the list. Unlike in a GitHub distribution where only the few developers who made edits on the GitHub are rewarded, in this method, basically all employees were included. I personally chose not to participate in any of these airdrops, but that was basically the mechanism. This is the facts of what happened. And so there is no gatekeeping, there is no coercion. So that's the state of the universe back in April, May this year. And on looking at this mechanism, because we thought this is actually like significantly better than GitHub distributions, we took this seriously. So we didn't think that this is the best final idea, but actually this was in some sense better than previous methods. So we continued to improve on it. We created the system we call the Eigen Ecosystem Network, which is already on GitHub, where once this information, these lists, either it's our team and other teams, all this information is public and transparent. Anybody who wants to use it can use it. And one other thing we did when we created the Eigen Ecosystem Network is made it so that each team, instead of having lists, just puts in the team wallet address. And this could basically be a complex smart contract that has splits and downstream division to their own team members, kind of like what Protocol Guild does. But each person who's doing a distribution can actually use these lists at their discretion. So we continue to believe this mechanism is actually superior to other mechanisms of contributor rewards and builds positive sum network effects inside the ecosystem. So that's, I think, the actual story. We have this 30 plus teams that we created a list for, distributed based on specifically on request. There is no employee or company malfeasance involved anywhere. I'm proud to stand by the team that we built at Eigen Labs and consider it a privilege to lead them. We are very happy to receive honest criticism, but we do not think this constitutes that. The story hinges on one anonymous team feeling pressured. We do not have any evidence to believe this from the many teams we surveyed and the many who have publicly stated that their experience is the opposite. However, if any team was pressured, I want them to feel free to DM me. I want to personally make sure, firstly, this never happens. Second, we'll make sure that any such airdrop is absolutely returned and the project continues to be treated as a valued ecosystem partner. But we have no evidence to believe that there is any of this happening. So
Sreeram, the way that CoinDesk painted the story, and Danny and I think it was Sam over there, they said the team behind EigenLayer quietly worked to earn employees big paydays from airdrops, raising conflict of interest concerns. At least one team felt pressured to pay up or risk consequences. So you just covered the feeling pressured part, but what do you think about this idea that like there were people internally at Eigen that were like, maybe it wasn't part of their job, but they were, seeing a big pot of gold at the end of this list. Like, what do you think about that?
I think if it was that they would receive the airdrops kind of personally, as opposed to it goes to a list which includes all employees, this theory is believable. But we have neither evidence to believe this thing that any employee went out and sought something for themselves. Yeah. So as I said, the teams approached us with a request, and that's what our teammates were responding to. So again, no evidence to believe this particular theory that some people were trying to kind of fish for airdrops for themselves or anything like that. I think one thing that I want to say is, as a team that went from nobody or very few people knew about us to suddenly at the center of action in March, April, maybe the teammates didn't perceive like, oh, when you say something, you're being treated as like, oh, if you don't do this, no, they're just like talking like they used to talk like 6 months back with their friends in the BD
Right.
ecosystem. And suddenly that the fact that the perception is reversed and they're being treated as, oh, you are at the you're controlling the gates of the to the golden treasure or something like it. I think it was genuinely just miscommunication somewhere.
Yeah, Shreyas, can we talk about that actually? Because tracing I think it's fair to say like the meteoric rise of EigenLayer over the course of the last even 12 months or so. I totally understand that, right? Especially when you're in the early days of a startup, everything is so scrappy. You don't have a lot of processes. You're just trying to kind of hack it and survive, right? And then the select few amount of startups are lucky enough to kind of experience this meteoric rise. And I could totally imagine that, right? From the perspective of, EigenLayer is still a relatively small team. And, it used to be kind of, okay, we're trying this crazy restaking thing. And now the perception is, EigenLayer, $13 billion TVL protocol. And, this idea of being kind of like a gatekeeper, a more important, player in the ecosystem, I would say. And so, I want to get a sense from you, like, even just looking at how much is that sort of growth and maybe like the natural growing pains of being a startup a part of the story? And then, you definitely responded to the, to the coercion claims, just strongly refuting that is what I heard from you. But how do you think about this idea that, now that EigenLayer is maybe a more important player in the ecosystem and being very influential, that you kind of have to scale into, being held to a slightly higher standard and being under a microscope? And how do you think about all that stuff?
Yeah, no, I totally feel that thing that you just said. Like, 12 months back, let's say August 2023, if you rewinded, we had just launched on mainnet, maybe 1 month back, last year. And we had maybe $25 million in deposits on a contract which just had staking. Like, that's where we were 1 year back at this time. And even March of this year, when, March, April this year, when some of these events happened, our BD team had like 5 people. and like that's all we had. And we had so many sides of the marketplace. We have stakers, we have operators, we have avs's, we have roll-ups, all this managed by basically 4 or 5 people. So we were basically not ready to be a project at the center of some large ecosystem. So this is reflected in so many ways. This is, I would say, one of the examples, but so many ways. For example, when we launched our mainnet in the version of our mainnet in April this year, where like AVSs went live, several of the operators were scrambling to launch together with the mainnet, because we were like in standard startup fashion saying, oh, next week we're going live with the AVS mainnet. It's a go, ready. And like operators are like, you give me 4 days notice to actually show up on your mainnet. What are you guys smoking? And it's a very fair criticism. We were not processing this like, oh, there are 200 operators and like 20 avs's and all these other participants who are rushing to come to mainnet. We were processing this like, hey, it's a startup. We don't know when we're ready to launch. We've been trying to hit launch like in January, February, March. Now we're ready, let's hit launch. And it's so this is what happened as an example. And then several things, like when we upgraded our contracts, many of the downstream LRTs were not aware of how to integrate into these contracts. These contracts were on testnet, for example, but we hadn't specifically taken time to ensure that all our downstream dependencies upgrade as we upgrade. Like, again, not perceiving our own centrality in an ecosystem, still following exactly the same like processes we had maybe 6 months back. So I would say around like March, April, May, we started seeing problems in all kinds of different spaces of a maturing startup. So a startup that went from, oh, yeah, you can iterate and nobody really cares about how you're iterating on your processes, to something that, oh, now tens of teams are impacted. So we should be thoughtful, we should communicate better, we should have better processes, be held to higher standards. Absolutely. All of this stuff, basically over the last few months.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Namada, the shielded asset hub protecting the future of the multi-chain. Namada is a chain that's near and dear to my heart because in previous seasons of Bell Curve, we've talked about how the cardinal original sin of most blockchains is not thinking about privacy from the beginning, but also because if we want to onboard a whole bunch of applications, it doesn't work in a default transparency setting. So Namada not only brings about a better future that we all want, but it's going to help onboard a ton of new applications. So Namada introduces a novel shielding reward system. The way that it works is if you hold your assets in the shielded set, you help strengthen Namada's data protection guarantees and collect non-rewards in return. Namada will initially support IBC and Ethereum-based assets, but eventually the idea is for this to expand into a comprehensive hub for all assets. Really, really excited about what the folks over at Namada are doing. I highly recommend that you go and check them out at namada.net. You can follow their mainnet launch, which is soon TM. Very exciting. Tell them that I sent you. Click the link, bottom of the show notes.
I think the main grievance, just seeing people on Twitter, Sreeram, is that CoinDesk had to call this out instead of EigenLayer being upfront and honest about it. And it's something that Santiago and I have been talking about for Empire Podcast with like angel investing. It's like investing is not the problem. It's not disclosing something if you have like someone on. So like we try to be very upfront on that kind of stuff. Did you guys ever think about kind of just being public and upfront about the list, or you just never thought it would be a problem?
No, that was the Eigen Ecosystem Network, was basically a transition from, hey, this was sent to like a couple of parties, to we now actually want to create a system which is public and transparent. And in terms of these existing airdrops, AltLayer was the first one. It specifically calls out like Eigen Labs and our EigenLayer and 39 teams in its website.
It's in the blog post. Yeah,
it's on the blog post. It's, many of our employees claimed with their public ENS addresses. This is not some secret scandal. This is actually exactly how all airdrops happen. That a team decides who are all the ecosystem projects that they're contributing. Either they use several of the processes we've talked about. They use Twitter like mentions. They use Discord. They use GitHub. But instead, in this one, they were like using one additional metric, which is actually teams that contributed to the ecosystem. So that's how we thought about it. But we realized that we can actually, like, we don't have to make a call, or somebody doesn't have to call us to get a list like this. This should be public and transparent. The Eigen ecosystem network GitHub was created in June, way before any of this stuff. So absolutely on the same page. We have to be much, much more public and transparent on everything we do. And but there's a difference between when you get approached first time to do something and then you do it.
Right, right,
Everything
right.
is not like some great pre-planned event. It's just, hey, we got an email, we need to respond to this. This sounds really interesting. Let's do it, and press send. And so that's. But I think I resonate with Mike on, as your kind of prominence or importance in the ecosystem grows, it's worth not doing the hit send. It's worth thinking carefully. It's worth escalating everything, getting inputs from, the board, the team, all of that. And we're maturing into those better processes.
Yeah, maybe this is like an extension of Mike's question, but I guess what do you think about this process? Like we're talking about EigenLayer specifically here, but like just zooming out and talking about like the whole industry, like no matter who you are, like just what do you think about, airdrops are a weird thing, right? Because in one sense it's like, yeah, it's great because you're actually being able to incentivize and not just incentivize, but reward people who have helped you out. On the other hand, there's the obvious conflict of interest. So like, when I think one of the three companies that did the airdrop for you guys was EtherFi. And I'm like, okay, well, like if I'm like Renzo or Swell or someone else, I'm like, well, damn, do we need to be paying EigenLayer 2 here? So I guess, how do you just think about this in general, not even related to only EigenLayer?
Yeah, I think it is complex. So in terms of conflicts of interest, we've seen this arise not only with this story about Eigen Labs, but also with a previous story with EigenLayer and the Ethereum Foundation, with EF people getting advisorships at Eigen
This was the Justin Drake and Dank
Justin Drake
Donkrad.
and Dankrad and several. Basically that was the story of Justin and Dankrad, and I think. Again, that was such an interesting story in how it was presented versus what actually happened. So maybe it's worth covering that, and then I'll go one level meta and
Sure.
talk about.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, you know, uh, we've been working closely with EF researchers for several years. Like I remember February 2022, Denver went up to Dankrad and said, "Hey, we have this new like thing you can stake and then restake, and then like you can do this." And then like Dankrad took a second and is like, "This this is crazy. This should not happen." And then he thought a little bit more and, oh shit, this is bound to happen. Somebody's going to build this thing now that you said it. So if somebody's going to build it, we want to make sure that people who care about the ecosystem build it. And he started asking me a lot of questions like, why are you doing this? What do you want? What's the expected outcome? You know, and I ran through various things. I explained like, okay, if you can build all kinds of features for Ethereum without actually having the core devs to do it. And as long as enough people stake, you can actually get similar trust guarantees. And we drilled into various things. For example, what if for example in EigenDA, nodes participate and nodes stake and participate, but they don't actually make the data available? Then what happens? And then my assumption, this is February 22, was that, oh, Ethereum will fork around such falls. And then Dankra just like, no, Ethereum doesn't fork for anybody else. I mean, of course, Ethereum, who knows what Ethereum will fork for, but EF research will not be supportive of these kind of ideas. So you should not think about it. So this is a good 1.5 years before Vitalik wrote "Do Not Overload Consensus" article. So we were like, very close with many of the Ethereum researchers. Myself, a researcher, we've been talking to them from day zero on all these ideas. And as I got that feedback from Dankrad, I'm like, oh, okay, we cannot build EigenDA assuming Ethereum's going to fork for us. What else can we do? And then what other problems exist? Like, is it overloading the economic consensus of Ethereum? because you have only so much economic stake and it's being also used for other things. How do we think about that? How do you measure economic leverage? So we invented this mechanism called stake sure, which actually solves that problem. And today Vitalik in some discussion between Mega ETH and Mega ETH and Monad posted, oh, you can use stake sure to solve this problem, as an example of thinking about how to solve economic leverage. So there was the social overloading, which is when you have some event happen on EigenLayer, how does this affect downstream? So we can solve that using the Eigen token and forking. So we invented a solution to solve it. And then there's computational overloading, which is if the same stakers and operators are running hundreds of hundreds of networks, then that can be centralizing, because now you have to run hundreds of networks rather than just run one Ethereum network. So EigenDA's horizontal scaling was a solution to this problem. And of course, all of these things, Tankred and Justin and Vitalik and many others actually contributed generously without, a lot of useful inputs, without being advisor or anything else. And so this is the history. So we've known them for a long time. They've been very helpful. And, so when we were going to do the token, we felt it is natural to actually bring some of them as advisors. So we talked to Justin and Dankrad, and they said, oh, we have to talk to the Ethereum Foundation and to other people before we sign on this. And they did. And they came back with a request saying you should not use this on any publicity material, because there is a risk there for Ethereum Foundation saying, hey, you go and say, put on my website EigenLayer advised by Justin Drake, rather than actually them giving very important inputs in correcting how we do various things. For example, we announced a policy that no LRT can exceed 33%. If it exceeds 33%, your rewards will be capped at 33%. This is something we discussed very closely with the Ethereum Foundation. I don't care about if I remove that cap, I'll have way more STE staked on EigenLayer. I can say I don't care, but we care because we care about Ethereum. So we want to take these inputs in shaping how this system is built. We got approached by every other chain in the world, chains which are connected to exchanges which have hundreds of millions of wallets, right? And they want to come to us and say, hey, build EigenLayer on that. We say, no, we're building on Ethereum because we believe in these values and we are contributing back. So building this thing requires us to have, inputs from the Ethereum Foundation on various things, whether it is decisions that we are making, as I mentioned. So now we move to permissionless assets on EigenLayer. Is this something we should support? Who do we talk to? Or is it net positive for Ethereum? Is it something that we should do or we should not do? So we were very careful in how do we build this to be positive sum for Ethereum, for ETH? How do we make sure it doesn't affect the MEV pipeline? How do we make sure? There are 100 angles here to actually consider, and it takes a lot of time from several of these people to actually come advisors on this. And so that's the context of this story, is basically, and what they had said, and is that they will announce it from the Ethereum side. The researchers themselves will announce it in a way that is actually not marketing, but actually holding us to a higher standard. They're not like regular advisor. We call them decentralization advocate, because they're basically every time we go, they're not telling us, hey, or what you guys are doing is fine. They're trying to find problems in everything we do and say, hey, you should not be doing ABCD. Our ecosystem in general, the crypto ecosystem, has a problem in having clear conflicts of interest policy. Whether it's the right policy for Ethereum or not, I don't know. And it's up to the Ethereum Foundation to decide. But we had to put a lot of thought into our own conflict of interest policy after both the Airdrop and this stuff back in May. And we put together a very strong conflict of interest policy, which precludes employees from obtaining new significant financial interests. It's crypto. People already have existing financial interests. Those need to be declared. But new ones, we capped at $10,000 per project. So each project has to decide what is the conflict of interest policy, what are we doing here, and how do we make sure that these policies reflect, whatever the values of the project are. The other thing I want to add is on the Ethereum side, we've been in discussion with, the other question that we got was, hey, why are you doing like a couple of researchers rather than the whole protocol guild? There's a big protocol guild announcement coming up, which we've been like in discussions for now 6 months. So, you know, and the other complaint people had were, why are you not transparent with it? That I thought was the biggest complaint. And at that time already, Jason had put up this as a answer on his ARB, and it was coming up in 7 days, all of that. So this is just catching the narrow window between like when something happens and in less than a month when there was going to be a formal proper announcement. So that's the story there. So I think a lot. I would attribute a lot of this to also our own growing pains, like not having a proper process to think about all kind of second order, third order, fourth order consequences of each of these things. But in as an industry, I think we need to think a lot more about like conflicts of interest. So I agree with that as a principle.
So that's what I think as well. Just like even zooming out of this, specific situation, I think that it's very difficult in the world of crypto to completely avoid conflict of interest. I tend to think that probably the best way to deal with this is just disclosure, just improving your disclosure policy, and just for not even for EigenLayer, but everyone who's listening to this, and I think that that's everything from if you act as an advisor as like a side hustle to companies, or you receive airdrops or whatever it is. I mean, I think just it's kind of like it feels like there's a perception like the cover up is worse than the crime, and if you're just really upfront, there is no crime. It's just like you're just so yeah. I sort of feel like just conflict of interest disclosure is probably the answer here. And now even in the case of like Justin Drake and Doncrad, like I don't actually think that's probably on EigenLayer. There's probably more of an EF question and how they want to deal with that. So, I think there's also, what do you want to disclose? And then, which is the organization that's responsible for doing it, I think are the takeaways and questions that if I work in crypto, I think everyone should just be asking. I guess last thing for you, Sreeram, here is, I know that actually, in reading the blog post, it looks like you guys actually spun something up. You were alluding to this a little bit earlier, but in June, you actually created something called the EigenLayer Ecosystem Network, which was inspired by the Protocol Guild. So I just wanted to, give you a chance to, since this has come out, or even before when you realize like, hey, we're in this more prominent place, we might, we're being held to a higher standard here. What are some of the changes internally at EigenLayer that this has, catalyzed?
Yeah, I think the Eigen ecosystem network is basically like a mechanism to make all of this transparent and public. So you have basically a list of, so the original thing that we did was collect these list of 30 ecosystem projects. And like the questions would be, who are these 30 in each of these projects? Who are these people that are actually participating in it? Instead, just create a public GitHub repository where each team can put up their team address, whatever that address is, and they can issue pull requests to actually update the GitHub repository to as new teams come up in the ecosystem. And when a new project comes up, and maybe each of the teams, if they wanted, they can use their company's wallet address, which is what we recommend big teams to do. But there'll be small projects which are a couple of people coming together and hacking an AVS or whatever, and they might just split the thing into their own addresses, whatever. And so this is just a public information repository for anybody who wants to do a distribution. They could look at some of this and channel it to whichever subset of the ecosystem partners they want to do it for. Internally, we created a policy to disallow receiving airdrops, which, as I mentioned, instead of having individuals, you just have it go to the company if at all there is anything. And so that's one change in the company's policy. The Eigen ecosystem networks was tweeted out by the Eigen Foundation. I can give you a link to put it in show notes. And so that's something that, if you're an ecosystem project, please feel free to go and add yourself into this list. And I think one of the things I think about is we are as a crypto ecosystem, one of the really strong things that crypto invented is incentive alignment. So this goes up and down the protocol. It goes to the protocol, it goes to the people who are participating in the protocol, it goes through all kinds of downstream consequences. And uh, I think as an ecosystem, we should be iterating and trying to find systems that work well for all the participants. So this is an attempt at taking an idea that kind of worked but had some flaws and remove it, try to make it better. I'm sure this is not perfect. I'm sure we're going to come up with another iteration in like a few months, but that's the process. Like the ability to like take these ideas and iterate, and each new one, hopefully we get better.
So I think we're almost, we can sort of move past this portion. But I realize we've spent most of the time talking about this one, the first article here on the sort of list of airdrops, and so I just want to give you a chance to respond to this sort of second article that came out about certain Eigen Labs employees claiming airdrops. And
As a company, we have policies for what you know. For example, when the Eigen Foundation created its airdrop, it has policies for who can receive it, and each of these airdrops have terms of service on who can receive these airdrops, and it's up to each of these individuals claiming these airdrops to claim, to comply with it, so comply with the terms of service. And as I mentioned, I've not been participating in any of these airdrops, so it's out of my decision. But each employee is supposed to be complying with it, whether they are in US. We have employees not in the US. We have employees traveling outside the US. Whatever the context is, it's too fine grained for me to get into here, but or to even know. And so I would say, as a crypto ecosystem, instead of talking about this thing, we should be talking about how to make crypto welcome in America. Like that's the real topic to me. Instead of saying that, instead of talking about all the things we are doing to comply with laws in the US as a company, and individuals trying to find ways to access products that they are, you know, interested in, but not allowed as US residents. So I think that's the bigger story. And we all know the story as participants in the crypto ecosystem. So in some sense, I'm surprised this is an article.
Sreeram, I actually want to get into I'm some of the upcoming developments that EigenLayer is working on. And I mean, we've been talking about EigenLayer as this kind of growing from this seedling scrappy startup into a very important protocol in the Ethereum ecosystem. And I think the idea of restaking, even on Bell Curve, we did a whole season on restaking and talked about how it's sort of changing. And I want to get a sense from you on some of the updates, just in terms of EigenLayer as a company. We did this Rio acquisition that you guys talked about, that we talked about at the beginning, and you guys also raised a big round from Andreessen Horowitz. So I guess on these themes of kind of like scaling a startup, and growing into some more of these processes, and some of the changes on the company level, like talk to us about what's going on from an EigenLayer sort of team perspective.
Yeah, we have grown quite a bit, to 75 employees at Eigen Labs, and a couple of dozen at Eigen Foundation. So as a team, we've had to scale, and the amount of talent that we have kind of collected in the team, I'm really excited about. I think very few people know what's behind the scenes beyond the more publicly facing either business development or like strategy people in the team. But we've put together an absolutely insane engineering team, you know uh, people bringing a wide variety of experience, way beyond crypto. For example, our COO built was founder and CEO for the largest third-party app store outside of Apple and Google back in the day, reaching more than 1 billion phones. His name is Chris Dury. We have people with experience, building some of the most important startups in Web 1, Web 2, all these kinds of things back in the day. somebody who was chief architect at ePinions, which was one of the kind of hottest startups back in Web 1. Um, uh, the amount of talent density we have accumulated in Eigen Labs, I'm really, really excited about, the set of things we can build and deliver. In terms of concrete, milestones and accomplishments, um, last 6 months, there's been a lot. You mentioned the A16Z round, which we raised some capital to go have enough buffer to go build this kind of a team. We we did the season one stake drop, like the non-transferable token launch, which happened earlier in this year. In terms of talent acquisition, we acquired Rio, which was a liquid restaking protocol. Rio was one of the teams that indexed very heavily on, let's get people with a lot of experience in crypto, like 8 years. Many people in the team have 7 plus 8 plus years in the crypto ecosystem, and really excited to have them join us. And I think of like our team as trying to blend all kinds of interesting elements, people with deep crypto experience, people with deep like engineering experience around like the whole ecosystem. We have researchers, and we also have like super kids, these biscuits that we are fond of in crypto. We have Gajesh, we have one more who's kind of a lead developer for us. He joined us when he was in his high school, and he now leads most of the development. His name is Gautam. So we have all these different elements of DNA, and we try to put them together and make it work. And Jason and I were just talking before the show. As you go from 25 30 to like 75 80, like you go through this phase transition where you have to like rework all these processes, how the team works together and all of that. And we're uh, we're doing that, and finding like the new correct equilibrium for us. So that's on the team side. On the protocol side, I know the obvious number everybody focuses on is TVL, because it's like single number and it's easy to understand. So we have around like 5 million ETH. And here's one thing I find like funny about some of the media reporting is they say, oh, EigenLayer TVL dropped by 20%. And then you go and look at it, and it's like, it's exactly the same 5 million ETH. ETH price dropped. And now it's a story that EigenLayer TVL dropped. And I find this very consistently happening. So I don't know, like you guys have friends, maybe tell them, don't don't do this. But the but that's the one simple thing everybody focuses on. And I would say to some extent we know we have like ETH supply to actually like supply to protocols that actually want to use it. So our focus is shifted from that into how do we create useful protocols, how do we empower useful protocols to actually come and build on top of the ecosystem. So we have the staker side, operator side. Again, operators, we're really glad to have all the top operators participate in our protocol. So the AVSs, we have, I think, 15 plus AVSs on mainnet, 20 on testnet, and I would say at least another 50 building in various stages. It does take time to build an AVS. Today, it's not a simple matter of like, hey, go and click a button and then you can launch an AVS. There are other people building these kinds of mechanisms on top of EigenLayer. For example, AltLayer has this package called the Restaked Rollup, where you can actually create an AVS which does transaction ordering and finalization for your rollup, and that's just like a rollup. That's a new AVS instance you can just go and spin up. So there are people building this, but from our point of view, um, the building an AVS is still pretty difficult. So it takes like 6 months to 1 year. So many projects are on various steps in that horizon. We are making important partnerships with key players in the ecosystem, where they either use some feature in EigenLayer as an AVS to actually power something in their protocol. So all of that is happening. And EigenDA launched on mainnet. EigenDA being one of, I would say, built specially to scale throughput for the Ethereum ecosystem, running today on mainnet at 10 megabytes per second. I think people don't really understand what 10 megabytes per second is. It's like several hundred times more than what Ethereum's 4844 is, which is still not being fully utilized. So the big problem for us there is, what are the new use cases that are throughput hungry, and what can we empower using this kind of massive throughput? So that's a thing that we're doing. We're doing an experiment of trying to crawl all the blockchains and show that you have enough throughput on EigenDA to write all of these blockchains. We have a roadmap to scale this. We don't think 10 megabytes per second is enough. We have a roadmap to scale this. Over the next 6 months, our goal is to get to 100 megabytes per second. So EigenDA is, again, we have an absolutely insane team for EigenDA building this product. So we have that. And then we did the Eigen token announcement, the token white paper, which I think conceptually, to explain simply, the Eigen token, what is it doing? If you think about what makes a blockchain trust minimized, normally, as an academic, one of the models we used to study is, if the majority of validators are honest, then you can prove some properties about the blockchain, irrespective of what the other validators do, because you're taking consensus, and as long as the majority are honest, you can get certain properties. But what makes a blockchain really powerful is not that it's depending on a majority of validators, but it is the correctness of these blockchains are independent even of a majority of validators being honest, because you have the superpower of forking. Right? So if the majority of validators go rogue, you can fork the system. Taking a meta view, we think of these as self-enforcing coordination system. So if you think of the blockchain as a coordination system, who is enforcing it? Is it enforced by an authority? Is it enforced by a committee? Is it enforced by a majority of validators? No, it's actually self-enforcing. So we call these self-enforcing coordination systems. And the reason it's self-enforcing is because blockchains have forking. Like, if the majority goes wrong, you can fork around that fault. And this forking is not capricious and, hey, let's meet in a Discord channel, or let's meet on Telegram and discuss, I'm going to fork Jason out because I don't like him. But it is, you're forking on self-evident things that are pre-agreed, on self-evident events that are pre-agreed. What is an example on Ethereum? If like the block was invalid, right, according to the state transition protocol, if the next block is invalid, even if it's signed by a majority, nodes should not accept it, and you should fork around it. So this is self-evident that it is invalid, and it is pre-agreed that you never accept an invalid block. So this is what forking is. And the main observation is, if forking is the superpower of blockchains, which is what makes it not dependent on an authority or a committee or a majority, applications don't have access to forking. Applications built on a blockchain don't have access to forking. So to me, this is a major failing in the architecture of blockchains itself. Forking is the superpower of blockchains, but it's only access to L1, but not to other things built on top. Other things built on top are suffering as a consequence of not having this access. And so what we want to do is to enable applications to access the superpower of forking. And that's what the Eigen token is a step towards. So the Eigen token is a mechanism for applications to punish stakers, or even a majority of stakers go rogue. The token can fork around it and then throw those guys out, and make it possible for applications to penalize stakers who are doing something wrong, even without having to trust an authority, a committee, or a majority. So that's the Eigen token. You can think of it as, forking is a superpower of blockchains, but it is trapped inside the L1, and I'm just giving access to it all through the ecosystem. Like, whether you're a rollup, whether you're an application built on top of the rollup, all of us have an access to this superpower. So it's flipping, basically, do not overload forking, or do not overload social consensus of Ethereum, and saying, hey, can I create like a meta mechanism that actually offers social consensus, forkability as a service? So that's the kind of paradigm shift that the Eigen token created. And again, going back to kind of the whole talking to EF and EF researchers, this is very, very important input to us that, oh, actually forking is on Ethereum is designed only for L1 core events like safety or liveness violations, not for all kinds of things built on top. So that led us actually to create this containerized system which can supply forking to everything built on top. So that's the power of the Eigen token. That's why we called it the universal intersubjective work token. Intersubjective was a word that was memed widely. I like things that are memed widely. Restaking was memed widely. But and intersubjective was basically a new word for social consensus. We thought social consensus had become kind of corrupted by the connotation of, hey, we're going to come on Discord or Twitter and shout at somebody and then like fork them out. And we just think this is very distasteful and like it's worse than all kinds of other systems that we have. So our idea is you only fork intersubjective forking basically means you only fork on self-evident things that are pre-agreed. So that's the Eigen token. A little bit of what we did there. I can talk about some of the other things we're doing and are coming up.
Yeah, I guess the two that stood out for me, Sreeram, were I saw that coming soon. You're enabling permissionless token support, so not just ETH is restaking, but any token, and that was actually a big theme of the last season of Bell Curve, which was just like, what is that ratio ultimately going to look like, and what is the preference for ABS going to be? Purchasing ETH denominated stake or their own or USDC or some other token or whatever it is. And then the other thing, you mentioned that there's a big debate going on because we love to debate semantics on crypto Twitter, and I saw there was some back and forth in between Mega ETH and Monad Ad on not only just the definition of a full node actually, but then stake sure ended up becoming a big part of that conversation as well. So that maybe we could end on those two things and just want to get your what's coming down the pipeline in terms of being able to support multiple different types of tokens, and how do you think that's going to impact ABS's security preferences, and then we can close on stake sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll get into these two things in detail. I'll just give like a quick list of all the things that we've launched and all the things that are coming, and then I'll dive into the permissionless token support and the other thing. AVS rewards launched on mainnet. So the original launch of like AVSs on EigenLayer did not have the ability for AVSs to reward the stakers and operators as well as slash them. So, but AVS rewards launched on mainnet. So excited about like AVSs starting to participate as our own in-house AVS EigenDA. Started giving a little bit of rewards using ETH. I think it's 10 ETH a month right now. So this is basically to start the whole process of testing and verifying that the reward system's working correctly. This is separate from any kind of Eigen native incentives that will go to stakers and operators of the EigenLayer ecosystem. So all these things happened, and then like what's coming down the pike is we have protocol upgrade called Pepe. People doing native restaking noticed that the cost of like claiming their like weekly rewards from Ethereum going through the Eigen layer native restaking system is expensive. So we invented a mechanism called Pepe, which actually reduces the cost quite a bit. So you don't have to claim each time when you get an update from Ethereum. You can batch them into like several weeks, and then so you only pay the cost one time. But with one extra cost, you can kind of like amortize over several of the partial withdrawals, is what it's called in Ethereum. So that's Pepe, basically make native restaking cheap. Like so that's the theme there. So that's going live, I don't know, in the next couple weeks. Programmatic incentives, that's a really huge deal. We innovated and designed a new mechanism for stakers and operators to be rewarded for opting in and serving many AVSs, as well as creating a mechanism for AVSs to want to pay fees because we want to have price discovery for economic security. That's the thing that, again, like you guys have talked a lot in the restaking series. What is the price of economic security? And of course, we know early in the game, the price is going to be low and it is going to go up. And so we want to enable like a really good mechanism for price discovery. So the way programmatic incentives work is based on rewards matching. So the eigen rewards that are directed, the eigen rewards only go to stakers and operators. And when they go to stakers and operators, they're directed based on their participation in AVSs. But if you participated in AVSs that paid a higher fee, you will get a higher fraction of the eigen emissions. So this incentivizes AVSs to want to pay fee depending on how much economic security they want. But their fee doesn't cover really the cost of staking. The eigen emissions will cover the cost of staking initially, but because different AVSs will be competing to acquire more of the stakers and operators to opt in, so you have this very interesting flywheel. So we want to kick off the rewards flywheel. And so to do that, we introduced this new eigen programmatic incentives. I think it's a very intricate and interesting mechanism. We can do a whole podcast on, but I'll defer it for the future. The Mike, any comments?
No. I was just smiling at the thought of doing a whole podcast on programmatic incentives. But sorry, didn't interrupt you there.
No, it's cool. There's a lot of interesting economics that went behind actually how we designed it. The other things that are coming up are governance for the EigenLayer ecosystem. I think our vision is to build humanity's coordination engine, which means we need to think not only about things that are natively in protocol, things like forking that I talked about earlier, but also how the protocol itself is governed. So we are innovating a lot on the governance side as well. So we'll have announcements coming up. New features on the slashing, is coming up in Q4. And the slashing release has broken major ground in solving a whole bunch of problems in accounting. Like how do AVS, if right now, if you look at our dashboards, every AVS says they have several $1 billion of stake. And this means we are overcounting. Each AVS is overcounting because the same stake counted across all these AVSs. And so we want to create a mechanism where stake is not overcounted, but counted precisely. In some sense, you can think of blockchains are just like next generation accounting systems. So you want to have a precise accounting of how much each AVS is drawing from this common pool of security. So we have a new primitive called unique security and going live with slashing. We also solved some of the core problems that we were kind of struggling with earlier. For example, the slashing veto committee. We don't need an enshrined slashing veto committee with the new slashing design. So we'll have a lot of information coming up on that. And, finally, the eigen forking, which is a core protocol feature, now being connected to AVSs to then have access to forkability. So that's another feature that's coming up. So these are all the kind of major things coming up. Also, another sub feature called operator sets, which basically lets inside an AVS, you may want to weight all the operators either based on stake or just each operator is weighted 1x or whatever these kinds of quorum configurations. And operator sets is a mechanism for AVSs to express these quorum configurations quite carefully. So that's all the things coming up in the next 6 to 9 months. So we're very excited about all of this. And of course, I didn't mention the stake drop. We did season 1 of the stake drop, season 2, and unlock, and all these token milestones also coming up in parallel. So excited about all of this for the community, and we will be ramping up our own comms to the community, because I think one thing we realized during a lot of this episode is we're doing so much, and from the outside it's not transparent or clear that we're doing all these things. So one of the things we want to do is to improve that significantly. We brought in a new head of marketing, chief marketing officer at the foundation, and improving our comms to the community. So now that I've given an overview of all the milestones coming up, I'll speak to Mike's question on permissionless tokens. So permissionless tokens is this idea that, after we launched, some other restaking projects came and they're like, hey, you can use any token. And you go back to the original design, where actually the design was pretty clear that it's arbitrary ERC20. We're just whitelisting which tokens are onboarded. The main reason for whitelisting is we don't want people to stake arbitrary tokens and expect rewards for all of them, while we may not be able to fulfill it. So that's the main reason the rewards are like designed primarily to go to ETH, and whenever Eigen staking goes live, those two. Permissionless allows AVSs to actually stake their own token in their for their ecosystem. There may be other like major tokens that show up like USD or BTC that may become big. And the way I think about what is the right denomination of economic security is cross volatility between what is the unit of risk. Imagine I'm transacting bored apes, and bored apes are priced in ETH, and I'm sending a bored ape from one chain to the other. Might as well get insurance or economic security in ETH, because risk is priced in ETH. But if I'm transacting something which is priced in USD, so my risk is in USD, might as well use USD as a unit of stake. And if I'm using something which is priced in BTC, then I would want to use BTC as the unit of collateral. So I think this is a very interesting dynamic, that the unit of economic security matches the unit of money, because everything is denominated in the unit of money. And so there's a cross network effect between like what you can stake and what the risk is denominated in. And this is one of our thesis for why we chose ETH, because it's the only money that can also be used securely as collateral, right? Like all the other things, if it's BTC, you're taking bridging risk or counterparty risk. If it is USD, you're of course depending on the custodian. This is the only token that potentially could become money, and or is money already to some extent, and is also could be used as economic collateral. So this was part of the thesis of us choosing ETH as the kind of primary source to fuel this ecosystem. But it's clear that there are, at the minimum, we already had things like special quorums even in EigenDA. So this theory of like allowing arbitrary tokens is not just at the eigenlayer level. We've like moved it up into EigenDA. In EigenDA, we have this ability. If I'm using EigenDA for my rollup, I can get ETH or Eigen or whatever stakers sign off on it. But I also have my own rollup token stakers sign off on data availability. So this is a core feature of EigenDA. So when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, we are doing permissionless token staking," it's that we've just opening up every step. This is our protocol here, is we want to open up one step at a time. And so we're excited to see permissionless token go live, and see who will use it, whether it's AVSs using to pay their own stakers. Like this is really useful, because when you're paying your own token stakers, you're paying them for work done, as opposed to giving dividend like objects. So that's something that I think will be attractive to a lot of AVSs. A lot of rollups, they can just integrate with EigenDA and then use their rollup token to secure their own network.
Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, I'm very interested to see when that ends up getting rolled out. And yeah, you guys clearly have a lot, on the docket for the next 12 months or so. And and maybe as we start to wind down here, we could just kind of tie off and put a bow on this whole conversation. But just in thinking about this, I think at least my core takeaway, and then I'll give you a chance to just close us down here, Sreeram, is just the need for more disclosure in general in like the crypto space. I do think that the airdrops and token incentives are a dynamic that doesn't really quite exist in other ecosystems as much. And we're a young industry, and in a lot of ways like a very idealistic industry, but crypto has kind of grown from, it's still this kind of nerdy Wild West thing, but we've also ascended to the global stage, right? Crypto is a key issue in the US presidential election, which blows my mind, right? And with all the positives that comes along with that, there are also some drawbacks as well, which is basically that we're on a much bigger stage, and we're going to start getting held to a higher standard of account. That doesn't necessarily mean and there probably was some not great stuff going on before, but it just means that, as we get onto the bigger stage, there's just going to be more eyeballs on us in general. So, for me, I think a huge part of this is just basically disclosures. But yeah, Sreeram, just want to give you like a final chance to, tie a bow and, what you learned from all this and
Yeah, I think I would go even one level meta, and I'd say legibility. I think legibility is basically this idea that whatever we're doing is clear and perceivable by the community, and that includes things like conflicts or airdrops, but it also includes what are we doing to actually try to build and improve the ecosystem. It includes like giving advance notice to the ecosystem on new upgrades coming up, including them in key conversations. So trying to make the whole process much more transparent and legible, I think, is a big thrust for us going forward. And I agree with you, Mike, that as crypto um, ascends into the global stage, we need to be held to a higher standard as an ecosystem. And I feel in a micro way that's also true for us at EigenLayer as we go from like a startup that some nerds care about to like something which is more central. We absolutely need to improve a lot of our processes, and we're here for it. So I'm excited to look at the next phase. Our roadmap and ambition is quite large. We want to build humanity's coordination engine, and uh, we we're marching ahead on that mission, and really excited for the community that's here with us, and look forward to improving, buttoning down and going ahead.
Awesome. Well, Sreeram, thank you for coming on today and speaking to us and answering my questions for you. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah, do it again sometime.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate you giving this forum.
Yeah, good to see you.
Talk soon.
Hey everyone, hope you all enjoyed today's episode. Want to give a final shout out to Namada. Again, a team that is near and dear to my heart. They are building the Shielded Asset Hub, which is protecting the future multi-chain. Talked a little bit about how that works in the mid-roll, but for now, what I would highly recommend that you do is go check them out. They're in their mainnet launch phase. You can follow along with everything at namada.net. You can start rewarding yourself by shielding your actions and strengthening data privacy for all across the multi-chain. So thanks again, Namada, for all the great work that you're doing.